Nick, I got to ask you to tell your story about Jimmy.eth gifting you Apes, as I believe was sort of what got you your first NFT. You tell that story, and then maybe you helped Snoop launch his first NFT, and how did you convince him to do that? Was he in? Did you think you were crazy?
The ape stuff, right. So I think there's a couple moments that happen simultaneously. All those things lead up to that one moment, right? I was really close with a engineer, developer, designer, really kind of a self-taught kid who knew a lot how to do a lot of this stuff on his own. His name was Frankie Nines. And Frankie Nines had actually worked for us like a decade ago, maybe not quite that long, to develop an app. And that app was called Snoopify. And what that app allowed you to do was download sticker cartoon like images and put them on your photographs. And then you would take those photos, and those stickers were like really fun cartoon things that you put over your face, or you like put a baseball glove on your hand, or for Snoop, a joint in your mouth, and you would then post them to your Instagram, right? And like, it was an early Instagram where not everything was so produced. People just throw photos up there. We kind of hacked the mainframe. Before you knew it, everyone was posting these photos, and this little app was rising the charts. I think we got up to like the top 10, and this is a crazy time. Like, that's like not easy to do. You have to pay for that. And so we did it. That was like this crazy first realization for me that digital assets are something. Now, this is pre-decentralization. So this is meaning that you would buy a sticker for $1, or you buy a pack of stickers. That was a microtransaction in the app. And then 30% goes to Apple. It lives in the app. And once you stop using the app, it fades away. But I remember thinking to myself, wow, people will pay for this, and people want to have fun with this. It's like gaming mechanics. And Frankie understood it really well because he'd worked at Zynga. He didn't go to college. Like, his education was Zynga. And I will say this now, Zynga, where I have seen through Web3, is like grad school for some of the most elite designers and game mechanic people. I think Dapper Labs, a lot of those guys were early Zynga. Anyway, I think like it's almost like college was Zynga and grad school was Dapper Labs. So Frankie calls me up one day in 2020 or 19. He's like, are you paying attention to Web3 and NFTs? And I'm like, my eyes glazed over. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he goes and he pulls out a couple different decks that he'd built. And these are decks that he'd built in like 2019 that to this day, they haven't even come to fruition in half the thinking. It was crazy. And he was at the time now working at Dapper Labs and working on something emerging called NBA Top Shot and building like early decks and stuff. So like, it's just about like relationships you build early and the stuff that they do, and you may come in and out. And he comes back in my life. He's the one who went online with me and showed me how to set up a MetaMask. And this is the guy who gave me the early education. And I remember just being like, this is too hard, but I did it. And then one day, right around the time that Top Shot's exploding is when I'm like, okay, again, got to pay attention. Call Frankie. Frankie said, hey, I'm going to introduce you to this guy named Jimmy.eth. Jimmy's a whale. And I'm like, okay, whatever. He owns all these crazy NFTs. I'm like, yeah, what? This guy owns cartoon characters, like whatever. And he introduced me to Jimmy, and Jimmy's at that point launching his own business called NFT 42, nameless. And Jimmy and I hit it off, and I'm fascinated by this guy who left his job to hike the Appalachian Trail and then decides that, crypto is going to be something and buys crypto kitties. And I'm like, look, who can I introduce you to? How can I help you? And I helped him meet some people who helped him along the way. It was just a really good kind of like mutually beneficial relationship. And then ultimately one day, these are the guys who like, I think at that point, I might have had like bought maybe one NFT. I don't even remember, and a bunch of misses. And I was on a trip with my family, and he's like, hey, what's your wallet? I'm going to send you these apes that I bought last night. I bought 420 of them. Pranksy bought 1,800 of them. I'm like, Pranksy, who are these people? He sends me 3, and they go on my wallet, and that was it. And I'm like, what do I do with it? And he's like, nothing. Okay, cool. It wasn't that long after that. They didn't really go up for a while. It was a few months later when they gave me the dog for owning the apes. And then I was like, oh, now I have this dog that's worth ETH. And that was my first trade. And that was where, I understood what they meant by stacking ETH. And I was like, okay, I got to start doing this. And, again, it was learning by experience. And, after a while, those apes obviously they rose and the community was built and the early energy was really happening. It was really the most exciting time for this new world. With it came a lot of, then I experienced the haters and the people who didn't want to see it win and the people who want to make it go away, whatever the case may be. But that said, that was sort of pivotal for me. And that put me in touch with, I got to know Yuga Labs and I got to meet these people behind it. And I got to understand their vision and where they wanted to go. And that's when I started to think about, okay, how does Snoop and Cordell and how do we get to experience this new gaming mechanic and this new IP game where you can build brands within their brand? And, it was a huge eye-opener.